Hello, welcome to my YouTube channel. On this video, we're going to be working with PHP, and PHP is a web-based or server-based programming language. So with PHP, you can do a pretty much heavy-duty programming with web development and also mobile app creation. So let's get into PHP, and PHP stands for Hypertext Processor, and we are going to be running our first code with PHP. So I've made a previous video, but I'm going to be going afresh, and we're going to be going through all the syntax and getting you started with PHP. Then we can move on to the next course of action. So first, in PHP, we're going to be talking about variables. For variables are storehouse, they're like storage. They're like storage. They do storage functionalities. They store loop functions or strings or integer into a value that we can then call upon later to perform some actions. So variables are, to call upon a variable, we're going to be using the $sign and a value. This value must not start with a number. That's not how PHP works. So there are certain rules and regulations and guidelines regarding coding with PHP. So PHP must start with a value, which is a text, and it can contain characters, and so there are certain restrictions. But to get more about the restrictions, you need to go to the documentation. So I'm going to create a variable key, and I'm going to assign it a value. I'm going to assign it 2, and I'll close it, because in PHP programming you must always add this semicolon. This semicolon is to say that we are done with coding this and we are going to the next line. So the reason why this is not actually reflecting, because it's supposed to be in colored, is because we have not actually created the PHP syntax, so, or the PHP element. So I'll create this PHP element by using this PHP, and I'll come down and I'll close the PHP syntax right here. So everything I write in between this is my PHP code. So we have written a variable, and let's write var. Let me give it another variable equals 5. So we'll close it again, and to print in echo in PHP we use the syntax echo. So when we want to echo, so let's perform a simple max function to further explain what variables are. So variable, I'll use the var, and I'll add the plus to add the two values together. So I'll use var2, and I'm going to close it. So if I save, so since web PHP is a server-based programming language, we cannot run it just like that, like HTML, CSS and the rest. We need a Apache server. So that's where XAMPP comes in. So XAMPP is a very versatile PHP server that we can use to run PHP code regardless of if you are using a Mac or a Windows. So download XAMPP, and we can now run it. So after downloading XAMPP, we'll have to run XAMPP. We'll click on XAMPP and run. We'll open XAMPP. So as you can see, this is our XAMPP server, and we can start the Apache server and the MySQL. This is for database connection. So after starting both this Apache and MySQL, we will save our file inside the XAMPP folder. So we'll go to File, Save As, and we'll use the Save As option. Yes, Save As, and we are going to locate in our localhost. We'll locate the XAMPP folder. So the XAMPP folder, we'll click on it, and we'll locate the htdocs. So here inside the htdocs, we can save our file. As you can see, my file is already saved, so I'm not going to go through this process. I'm not going to save, so I'll go back. So now I can actually see what is going on here in my browser. So I'll go to my browser and I'll search locals slash php with learning.php. So this will come up with our result for our calculation, and here it is right here. The result is 8. So variables are simply keys or storage location that we can store values and functions into. So getting to functions, we'll cover that, but just understand, I hope you understand what variables are. And these are mathematical expression which you can do with PHP, and there is plus, there is minus, and so on. All these are mathematical operations we can do with PHP. So let's move on ahead. So next we'll be talking about strings. So what are strings? Strings are data types. Strings are used to store words. So I'm going to create a variable that I'll call strings. This my string is not correct. So I'm going to equal it to a string. I'm going to create, you can use double quote or single quote, but I prefer using double quotes because it's kind of make me not miss my coding practices, which is very bad if you are trying to move within practices and get confusing at times. So I stick with double quote. So I'm going to add in a string. So this actually says, I'm going to close it. So this is a string because it's just words. So these are strings. So next we're going to be talking about integers. So I'm going to create an integer variable and I'll store. Integers are numbers. So you see these numbers, I didn't add a double quote or a single quote, they are just numbers. So next we have, similar to integer, we have float. Don't do this. I'm just because it's education practices, it's not advisable to use keywords like strings and integer and float as a variable name. But since we're just practicing, I'm trying to make it as relatable as possible. So the next is float, which are words that numbers that carry decimal points, decimal values. So that's it for strings, integer, and float. So next we'll be moving to array. So arrays are used to store multiple values. So for example, we want to store a, let me say it's array. This is an array. We'll equal it to, so I'll use the keyword array and I'll open a bracket and I'll put in words I want to save, like I'll just name random stuff that I can save here. So I can save a string and separate it with a comma. So I can save a string, I can save a number in here, I can save multiple things. I can save a value. Let me just, so I can save as much as possible inside this string, inside this array. So this is an array, and to print out this value, this computer value right here, we can easily use the echo to echo out that specific value. So we use the echo is array, and we'll use this parentheses and call out 0. So remember I said this is 0, 1, and 2. This is how we label this or index these values that are inside this array. So when we are calling 0, we are calling the computer. So this brings us to associative array. With associative array, things are a little bit different. Instead of indexing with 0 computer, I can associate another value to computer. That brings us the word associative array. So with associative array, we just need to use the $sign to call our variable. So we'll call our variable, we'll give our variable is associate, and we'll assign it a value. This value will be an array that will pass in. Let's give it a bracket, and now I can write a name, for example, a name. So we are trying to write a type of computer, then we'll use this equal to and greater than to assign a value to name. So the value we're going to be assigning to name is Hillary. So we'll separate it by comma. Remember, in array we separate by comma, but now that I'm putting it in a different line, it does not actually matter at all. We're just doing it to be more visible and to make our code neat. So we use the name. So let's assign another value. Let's assign a number. Let's assign age, and let's assign age the value of equal to, greater than, and the value of, let me use an integer, let me say 99. So that is the age. We assigned a value. So let me cancel there, and I will close it right here. I'll close it right here. Remember, this is similar to this one. So when I close it right here, I can print, and instead of me printing with index of this one to print computer, I have assigned a value name. So let me print out, let me echo is array, with the last sign is associate. Is this spelling correct? Well, I guess it is. So I'll use this, and I'll call on the name. So after calling on the name, I'm going to close, and I will save. So I'll save. So after saving my file, I'm going to go to, you can see this is computer and this is Hillary. So this is from our regular array, and this is from our associative array. So when I come back, so you see we printed out 0 and it printed computer. So no, a regular array is indexed by 0, 1, and 2, and a normal array, an associative array, I mean, is indexed by the name we associate with the value. So if we want to call on Hillary, we call on name, and if we want to call on age, we call on, if we want to call on 99 rather, we call on the age. So that's all for our associative array. So next we have the constructors. So inside the constructor, we'll be talking about the if statement. These if statements are very important in programming, just like when someone creates an account, or if someone's trying to access a page, we have to know if that person has the privileges. If he has the privileges, yes, he can access the page, and if he doesn't, we'll have to block the person from the site. So if statement is very important, and to write if statement, we are going to use the if is a reserved keyword in Python, in PHP rather. So as you can see, the color of this if change means that the if statement is a reserved keyword. So I'll use a bracket. So this is where our conditions will be entering, and I'll use a curly bracket, create a curly bracket. So in if statement, if anything we actually write out here is executed correctly, we can execute this statement that is inside this place. To further explain what I mean is that we are going to put some conditions inside here, and if our conditions are met, we'll execute what the code we want to put inside this place. To give you an example, let's write a statement inside this, a mathematical expression inside this place. Let's write 3 less than, we're going to use the less than, or 10, or less than 19 rather. So if this statement is correct, then we're going to print out a statement with the echo key, and we're going to print out a string which is saying 3 is less than 19. Is that 19? I think it belongs segregated. don't remember how to spell. Hopefully it's not just me. So I'll put. So after writing this statement, let's see how it works. So I'll save first thing which is very important, and I'll go to my browser. And now my browser, I'm going to reload. So as you can see, it clearly wrote 3 is less than 19. The reason why it's executed is because the statement is correct and it's true. So if it was false, now let's say for example 3 is greater than 10. And we all know that's wrong, right? But let's just test our if statement out. So I'll go back and I'll refresh my page. So as you can see, it didn't reflect because 3 is not greater than 19. So I'll go back to my code. So let's say for example this doesn't work out because 3 is not greater than 19. We need to have a backup code that will actually give us a response. So as you can see, it didn't give us a response in this our printout. So I'm going to go back and we can use the else. This else statement allows us, so if this is wrong, what else should we do? So we are giving the computer to print a, let's say you don't know math. So let's print this statement. I'll save. And if 3 is not greater than 19, it's going to print you don't know math. So this is condition statement. But if is greater than, or if it's less than rather, and I save this, as you can see, this is our code. So I'm going to do away with the previous code so that we shouldn't be seeing our previous code. So that's where comments come in. So to comment it. So we have commented out this line of code. As you can see, comments are code that we can actually see in the backend. They are like written out text that will not be run by the computer. Just like this is for code that we don't want to run, we'll comment it out. So the computer is going to skip through this place, this line of code, and print only this. So that's what comment statements are. So I'll save this and I'll show you. So I'm trying to get rid of this with those long comment statements. I'm going to reload. So as you can see, we have gotten rid of it. Moving on, we have another condition. So if we have this condition and this condition printed out this, else is going to take another condition. So we can write the else if statement right here, else if, and we can pass a condition. What condition do we want to pass? Another we're going to calculate another condition right here. So 4 is less than 10. I wrote so many zeros right there. So if 10 is less than 10, if 4 is less than 10 rather, we should print out, we should echo out 10 is less than 4. This is wrong, but let's just go with the flow. So I'll close it right here. So if this condition, taking this condition, print out this, or this print out this, else we'll now have this under. So if this condition is wrong, this condition is wrong, then we can print this. To print it out, we'll go to our browser. As you can see, it said 3 is less than 13. So the reason why it said 3 is less than 13 is because this one is correct. But if I were to change this to a greater than, and I'll save, so that condition is wrong, and we are going to move to the next condition. So it skip this first condition because this is wrong, and it went to this next condition and it worked on it and echoed this. But let's say this one is wrong also, and this one is wrong. We save, and we can go to our browser, and it prints you don't know math. So else if you're using else if is to test multiple conditions, but else is to test this and this does not work, we can now use else for the final backup. So the 404 error page you see is as a result of this. If you don't know what's 404 is basically an error message that says the page does not exist. So it's important to redirect somebody to another page to state that that page does not exist. Just like when somebody is trying to look for a page in a website that doesn't exist, instead of throwing out a full-blown error message from the data dashboard or the database server, we can redirect the person to another page that will have a fancy design and will also just tell the person that, wow, you are in the wrong place. So that's what a 404 error means. So we can use this S to achieve it. So to summarize, if statement, conditional statement, if statement help us make our program a lot smarter. So it help our program to decide on its own. That's what programming is all about. Programming set of instructions that will happen, and if it happens beyond a certain scope, it also has to give a result. So that's all for if statement. So next, similar to if statement, we're going to be talking about conditional operators. So this conditional operators is used to check two values or two statements if to give us a result. So equal to means this we use to test if a value is equal. For example, if 1 is equal to 2, which is not, or we use this to check an identical. So for example, we can test if a string of 2 and a regular integer of 2, if they are identical. So it won't be identical, but it can be equal. We'll further clarify that fact later in the future. But so compare, you can use the greater than, the less than, or rather the greater than and the less than. The greater than or equal to mean that either is equal to or is more, and we can use the less than or equal to, which is mean that either is under or is exactly, and we can use the greater or less. So this is used to check if either one of them is true. So either one or and 2 is greater than or less than, it should still give us a response. So not equal to, we use this, so to show that this is not, like 5 is not equal to 4. So and the not identical, which is similar to this but not, so you get what I mean. So that's what for the logical operators. So these are comparison operators used to compare two different values, but we're going to be talking about logical operators. These logical operators include the and, this and this. So with the and, we use this and, double and, to state that out. And there's also the or. If this and is, if this and this is correct, then do this. But this or is either if one of these is correct, then do this. So the or is signified as, bear with me a little guys. So the or is signified with this. So moving on, we have the not. So not equal to. So this not is signified with this exclamation mark. So just know that this, if this is not equal to this, then do this. If this or this is equal, or we are trying to compare two statements, either this or this is correct, then do this. But this and this must be correct before it actually works. But this, either one of them has to be correct for it to work. And this, none of them have to be correct for it to work. So let's do an example to test out the explanation. So let's make an if statement. So now we already know how to make an if statement, right? So we make an if statement and we'll give it a condition. So let's say 5 is less than 5. Don't mind my slow typing, I'm just. Then we are going to pass in a value. This value we are going to do what should it do when this is and this is correct. So equal to string that is true. So I'm going to close this. So closing this, I'll test it on my browser. So as you can see, it gave us no response. It gave us no response because nothing was printed out. So I'll go back to my code and I'll add this. I'll add this greater than or equal to. So I'm going to add the equal to at the back. So this is saying that if is less than or is equal to. So use the, and we'll check our browser. As you can see, that is true. So I'm going to comment this out to prevent some kind of distractions. So I'll go to I'll comment out this previous statement we just wrote. But if you want this explanation code, I can put a link in the description. Just type just let me know in the comment section. So these are our statements. We can now save and check to make sure. Yes, so we are seeing just this statement we printed last. So I'll go back to my code and I'll look at, let's use another one, which is, let's use the greater than. So to use the greater than or equal to, let's use the greater than. So we are just using to test, to compare. I just comparing. So if we save, it's not greater than, so it's not going to show. So it's not going to show. So to use another, let's use this equal to. This equal to. So this equal to is what they're trying to ask if 5 is equal to 5. 5 is equal to 5, right? And that is true. So we'll go back to our code. It's getting fun, right? So we can use this not equal to. This not equal to is just saying that if this is not equal to this, do this. So since it's not, we'll use the not, and we can hope it doesn't throw an error. So that's it. So hope you are getting the gist. So if we're trying to say equal to an identical, which is true in this our current circumstance, it's true. So this and this, they are equal and identical. So if we were to maybe call this a string, as you can see we have an error, but call this a string and we save it. So we reload. As you can see, it didn't reflect. But if we were to remove one equal to and we save, it reflected. So this is what's the difference between equal to, different thing, equal and identical. This is a big difference. So they are equal, this is 5 and this is 5, but they are not identical. You get me, right? Because this is an integer and this is a string, so they are not identical. So that's why we didn't get our deserved or our expected response when we use the double equal to. So let's move on to and so I hope you get this. I hope I've fully explained it as I hope I've fully explained this. Now we are going to be making an example with this. So first of all, we have to use the hand. So use the hand, we're going to just simply add another code right here. So we're going to add the double and we're going to give another condition. So the condition we're going to give is is 10, is it equal to, is it equal to or not, is 10 not equal to, let's use the not equal to 10. We're asking this question. So if this is equal and identical to this, and this is not equal to this, then do this. So we know that these two statements are wrong, but let's see what our programming will do. So let's see what our PHP will do. We'll come here and reload. So it didn't reflect. The reason it didn't reflect is because these two statements has to be correct. Even if this one is correct, even if we were to correct this one, I don't know why it's throwing an error. Even if we correct this one, it's not also going to work because it said this error. So let's just go back to our code. It looks like we are having an issue. So I'm going to remove this. Oh, our error is actually this operator right here. This is very, very wrong. I hope you spot it before me. So if you spot it before me, you are a programmer in your blood. So I'll save. So these statements and this statement are correct. So let's see what our code is going to do. So it says that is true. So the computer is garbage in, garbage out. Remember that when you are programming, to be specific about what, or rather specific about your intentions. So that's all for this. I hope. Okay, I've not explained or. The or statement means that this or this has to be correct. So if I use the or in this place, this is our or statement. So I'll save and can use to compare two instructions. So if this is not correct, I'll just use the not correct. But this and this is also not correct. It's going to give us a value. So this and this they are not correct, or this is not correct too. So echo out this. I hope you got that. So to summarize this, these are our comparison operators, and these are to test multiple comparison to give us a statement. So next we are going to be talking about switch statement. Switch statement is a lot similar to if statement, but we are going to be comparing different. If we're going to be comparing different statements like this, if we have to create different conditions, and it will be a lot of code that we'll have to write to be able to do this different conditions just to test out certain statement. But with the switch operator, we can do this a lot easier. So let's say this is our switch operator. To write a switch operator, we are going to use, let me Ctrl Z because I'm getting an error. Okay, I'm going to cancel from here right down here. So I'll cancel. So hopefully we don't get an error. Yeah, we didn't. So to write a switch statement, I'm going to, let's assign a number. Let's say a number is equal to, let's use the word like 10, and we'll close this variable. So now let's use the variable, let's use it to test out our switch. So to write a switch statement, we'll just need to use the word switch and a bracket. This bracket, we are going to assign the number we want to test. So this number, we'll use the variable that we just created, number. So inside this variable, we'll create a curly bracket outside to impute our statement. So to impute our first statement we're going to be testing, we'll just have to use the word case. So in switch statement, we use the word case. Hopefully this is not confusing. This is a very important concept in programming, in PHP also. So I'll just use 10. So 10, I'll use this. I'm not using a curly bracket, I'm using this. I'm not using a semicolon, rather I'm using this colon, because I want to test it with another statement, which is and if what I'm trying to say right here is if 10 is equal to 10, the case I assigned it was 10, it should equal a statement called, or you equal a string called it is correct. Then I can put my semicolon here. But if I want to test it with multiple statements, I can just copy this and paste it beneath this place. Don't mind my slow. If I were to blame anything, I'll blame this my mic. So I'll continue. I'll cover this place because I don't really need it. So I'm going to put another statement inside this place. I'm just put 18, and right here I'm going to put 14. So if we're to save and print out in our browser, you see it printed out it is correct, it is correct, it is correct. So this is a big problem since these are not actually correct. So to actually help us out, we'll use the keyword break. So with the word keyword break, we are trying to tell our program that if this is correct, it should stop the process and it should not continue. So it should break out of the loop, or rather the switch. We'll cover loop shortly. So I'll break out and break. So if our switch find our answer, is going to stop right there. So let me save, because I've break out of this statement and I've also break out of this statement. So I'll save and I'll go to my browser and reload. So as you can see, it saw our answer and it stopped. So if this were not to be accurate, for example, this was 1 rather, and this was our answer, so it's going to iterate through this process and look for our 10. So I'll go back to my Chrome and I'll refresh. It gave us the same answer. It is correct because it saw our answer inside the code that we wrote. So let's say we went through all these statements, and I'll change this to 11, and went through all these statements and we couldn't find the correct answer. So similar to else, well, I need to break out of this. So similar to else, we can use the word default. So with this default, we use a column, and we can now write our echo statement. What should be the default value if our conditions or our result is not found? So I'll print out the result was not found, and I'll close it. Kind of funny. So I'll save and I'll go to my browser, and the result was not found. So basically that's all for switch. So this is your take home regarding switch. Switch is very useful when you are trying to check a condition, a specific condition with different values. So you can use a case 1, case 2 to test just one condition with different values, as you can input as many values as you can right here. Now let's move on to loop. Loop is a very important concept in PHP. Let me comment this out so that it should not confuse our programming. So now this is commented. Loop is a very important concept in PHP. It helps us to loop different code to find our desired response. So loop can go front and back till it finds what we want. To make that clear, let's go use an example. Loops are very similar to if statements, but we are just going to change the if to while, and we'll put our condition, then we'll create a curly bracket. So this way we're going to write our code. So as you can see, it's very similar to if statement, but they are more powerful. So basically, while this condition that we are imputed inside this place, while it's true, we are going to repeat this, that we're going to enter the code that we're going to enter into this place. So while these conditions is met, we'll loop through this. So loop can go on forever till the condition that we wrote inside this place is met. We'll keep looping. So let's put a condition inside this place. For example, let's call it 50, or let's just use 5 to make it simpler. So 5, while 5 is less than 10, we are going to execute a code inside here. So let's echo out a statement: you need to buy a math textbook. So while this is true, keep repeating this statement. So I'll close it right there, and I'll save. So I'll go to my browser and I'll reload. So as you can see, it's currently giving me very many statements, because that our statement is true. So it will keep printing and printing and printing and printing and printing and so on. So there's no end to this until we finally end our code. So just for the purpose of not crashing my computer, I'm going to remove this to save, so that my computer should not crash. So I'll go back, which is already loading. So don't do this, because it's kind of, it might crash your computer. So I quickly made an error, but luckily for us, my computer is still loading. So this actually stopped. So if I were to reload, this might crash your computer if you run it. So let's wait for locals. Let me reload. So they say this page became unresponsive. So I'll reload. Hopefully we get nothing in our screen. That's the plan. So yes, we got nothing, because our loop, we got nothing because our loop had an error. So that's the unethical way I used to break out of the loop. So I should not lose a PC. The reason why that keep posting and printing is because 5 is always going to be less than 10. There's no thing that can change that fact. It's a very big fact that 5 is very much less than 10. So to understand the loop statement, is actually starting from here. So this is the condition, and while these conditions are met, it will come and print this. So after this is printed out, it will go back to our beginning again, continue check our condition. If it's met, it will print this again. So on and on and on and on till 4 becomes bigger than 10. So for 4 to bigger than 10, we just have to make this condition wrong, which is, so if we make this condition wrong and we save this, hopefully we got nothing on our screen. As you can see, it's currently blank because this condition is not true. This is not how loops are written. To clearly write out how loops are written, we can just create a variable right here, and let's name it counter, and we can equal it to, so this is our counter, is going to count this. So we'll equal it right now currently to 0. We'll close this, and in this place we are going to add another function or another statement, so that this code should not just keep running till eternity. So we're going to add a counter, a variable called counter, which we have assigned a value to it before, but we are going to do something plus. We'll be adding plus 1. So this will actually make our loop to have a definite end. So anytime you come down here, you will print this and you will add 1 to our loop, but 1 is still less than 10. So I did not change this place to our counter. So it's going to add 1 to our counter. So 1 is still less than 10. So we'll print this again and come back and come back and come back till our condition is false. So I'll save this and I'll go to my browser and let's see our response. So it did not give us a value because this is not true. So I'll use the less than and let's reload. So as you can see, it printed out the first time. So this is the first time, and the second time, the third time, the third, the fourth, and the fifth to 10. So let's keep counting: the fourth, the fifth, the sixth, the seventh, the 8th, yes, it's right here, the 9, and the 10. So that's it. So that's how we give our loop a definite end. Sure, we can write it like this, but to make it a little bit more readable, we can just use the increment operator. So we'll cancel this right here and we are going to just add the plus plus to show that we are going to be adding. So it's the same thing, it's technically the same thing, and it's going to, even if we reload, it's going to give us the same response. For us to clearly see how this works, let's change this to let's echo out the counter just to see how this is working in the background. So I'll save and I'll go back to my, as you can see, it started from 0, then 1, then 2, then 3. So if we just sum this up, is 10, but since it started from 0 and 0 is not a number, we can continue counting 2, 3, 4, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. So all these are less than 10. That's why it printed only to 10, because if it become equal to 10, less than or equal to 10, and we save this, then it's going to add 10. It's going to add 10. I hope you get it. So aside for loop or while loop, there is the for loop. So this for loop and while loop, they are kind of similar, but if you'd like to write a much smaller code, then you need the for loop. To write the for loop, let's do it. But for this to be a little bit more visible, I need to comment this out. So I'm going to comment it. So remember, if you want this page, you can just send me a message. You can drop it in the description and I'll send it to your mailbox. So this is for loop, and to write a for loop, we'll use the parentheses, just similar a little bit to while loop, but we'll be passing in our variable right here. So this counter, remember we did something similar to counter. We'll pass in the value and we'll assign a value 0. So instead of us writing it outside, we are actually writing it inside. And let's close this right here. Then we can now pass our condition. So what is the condition? So we are testing if this counter, this variable counter, which is equal to 0, is less than 10. So same thing we did with while loop, but now we are doing it with for loop. So we can close it right here again, and again we can add the counter plus plus. Hope you got that right. So I'll save this, and then inside this place I can now write my what I want to be printed out. So I'll print out, so let's just echo out the counter itself. So if you like this video, just leave a comment in the comment section, and I'll create more tutorials like this regarding Python and whichever one you choose. So this will print the same thing as this, but in the for loop we are just trying to be a little bit more preservative, but I prefer the while loop though. So let's reload, and you see it did exactly the same thing with the while loop. So they are kind of similar, but in the for loop you are just writing it a little bit more cleaner. So if we were to compare this to this, which would you prefer? Observe it. Let me make it a little bit clearer. So this and this, they are similar, but this one is more beautiful to me, but it's just personal preference. So in here we assign the variable is 0. Is a variable that we created called counter. So I'm going to assign the variable called counter 0. Then we now test, give it a condition if counter is less than 10. So then we use the counter, we are trying to add the counter plus plus so that it should keep adding up. So if this is correct, then we'll echo out the counter. So first of all, it's going to echo out 0, which is the first. Then it will going to add. When it add, it will echo out 1, because you keep adding 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 to 9. Remember, it stopped at 9 because 9 is less than 10. If we were again to add the equal to sign, which is less than or equal to, then we'll get this. So if you have been following on and you really enjoy the course, you are a programmer. And let's continue. For us to print, you see, it's just all banged up together. Let me use that word. So it's just together, but for us to make it in a different line, we can just add a, if you have a background in HTML, which you should, which I recommend you should, you just add the break statement right here. So right here I'm going to put the break statement, and I'm going to save this. So with this break statement, we add, the reason it's showing an error is because we didn't concatenate this. To concatenate this, I'm going to use a dot. That means I'm adding this HTML syntax to, or this HTML tag rather, to this variable. And if I save this, I'll come here, and so as you can see, it breaks out of this, go to the next line, break out of this, go to the next line. So I hope this gave you a better explanation of what loops are all about. So keep on following me on this course. Let's continue. So lastly, the type of loop we're going to be talking about, to summarize the whole concept of loop, is for each loop. So for each loop is used to iterate within arrays. So as you can see, we actually had to pass in value for this one, which I'm going to comment. But in for each, we use for each for arrays. So for it iterate through arrays and work on specific values in an array. I hope you know what array means. So you walk through an array, and when you get to the ending of an array, it breaks out. So it's not like the other kind of loop. For each loop has a sense enough, or is rather sensible enough to break out of a loop when the loop finally ended. We don't need to tell it, okay, stop right here. So similar to for loop, we're going to write the curly brackets. Inside this curly bracket, we are going to assign a value, or rather a variable, that we're going to call numbers, and we'll use a keyword here. This is a keyword we have not seen before in this course. We're going to use the ask keyword. This ask keyword is assigning the value which will be inside this place to this number, this other variable. So let me just use the word number. So these are two different kind of variable, and I said earlier that it work with loop, with array rather. So I'm going to create a variable called numbers, and I will assign it array, and inside this array I will assign a bunch of numbers. So that's all the numbers, and I'll end it right there. So for each number within this array, I'm going to assign the number to this number, and I'm going to print out, or rather echo out, the number. Then I'll concatenate this HTML syntax break. I need to put it in a, then I will close this. Remember, I'm doing this so it should be in a separate line. So I'll go back and I'm going to reload. So as you can see, it breaks out of each of the loop, and it brought it down and assigned it a different, it gave it a different value. So let me explain. This for each loop is actually carrying the numbers inside this array one by one is assigning it to this value, and one by one is printing it out, is echoing it out. So first you go to the loop, check these numbers, and you will look for the first number, which is 248, and we will assign it to this number, and you will print out this number. Then you will break. You will go back again, go look for the next number in the loop, which is 4545. You will come and assign it to this number, then it will break, and so on and so on. And when you get to the end, finally you write the last number and it will break fully. So for each is a very sensible loop that is not planning to crash our system like the others. So I hopefully you enjoyed the course, and on the next tutorial I'm going to be talking about functions and return values from functions and so on. So we're going to be covering global variables and so on. So let me not get into the nitty-gritty of those, but we're going to end the tutorial right here. And if you like this tutorial or this course that I did, please don't forget to like and leave a comment to support me in this channel, because I really appreciate when I found out that some people need this. So I'll keep dropping content like this, and I'm very appreciative of if you can just like, share and subscribe to my YouTube channel to get more content like this. So let's move on.